Hey, what is up gamers? It is The Honest Gamer here with Quantic Media, and this week I have another episode of the history of Final Fantasy. This time we will be covering Final Fantasies 9 through to 11. Before we begin, as this series comes to a close, I am giving you the chance to pick what series you would like to be covered next. So if you have a gaming series in mind, then feel free to drop it in the comments section below or on Twitter and Facebook. So, I won't keep you any longer. Here is the 4th episode in the series. Enjoy. The 9th installment in the series, Final Fantasy IX, was released in Japan in the year 2000 and in Europe in 2001. It introduced many new features to the series, such as the active time event, as well as a new skill system. These features were no doubt pushed by the game's new director, Hiroyuki Ito, who was last seen working on Final Fantasy VI opposite Yoshinari Kitase. Hiroyuki was this time around now fully in control of the game's development, as he was the only director working on the title, and having been the mastermind of the series' extremely popular Active Time Battle or ATB system, he was able to implement more changes he believed would be successful, but more on those later. The story itself centered around the young thief Zidane, who was part of a group of bandits called Tantalus who masquerade as a world-renowned theatre troupe. Whilst performing a show, the team kidnapped Princess Garnet, whom in a twist of fate actually wanted to flee her home city, having been concerned of her queen's erratic behaviour, to leave and speak to close friend and regent Cid. During this game, Cid is seen as a large bug, having been transformed by his wife due to his womanizing behaviour, and helps the party as an influential figure during the storyline. Final Fantasy IX featured a few improvements and change up from the previous ones in the series. It was these improvements which would allow it to grasp the highest Metacritic score seen yet. Its first major improvement was in the lines of the new ATE system, which was provided to improve character development and allow the player to gain special items with additional prompts for story-altering decisions. Being the last Final Fantasy released for the PlayStation, the game benefited massively from an improvement in graphics and also the soundtrack, which was the last to be produced solo by Nobuo Uematsu before Final Fantasy XIV a decade later. Gameplay was again the same as previous titles in the series, with you travelling a downsized world map and randomly entering battles whilst in the open. You could travel this map by riding chocobos, sailing on a boat, or by piloting an airship. The game was received well. As stated, Metacritic reports were extremely positive, and although overall the game performed well, there were some negative points raised by reviewers. For example, larger companies disliked the lengthy and repeated battles. Others, however, praised the game's improved graphics and the simplicity of the ability system over the previous two games. The soundtrack was hit with mixed reactions. Some praised its ability to enhance the heat of battle, moments of humour and tear-jerking situations, while others stated it was dull and uninspired. However, overall, Final Fantasy IX would be highly successful, selling over 5 million units worldwide as of March 2003. It was Square's last success before they would bring their newest project from the current PlayStation to Sony's newest generation of console. The 10th game in the series was released onto Sony's new console, the PlayStation 2, back in 2001, and would completely change up a lot of the more familiar elements of the previous games, such as a big change to how characters would level up, and also scrapping the massively popular active time battle system for a different one called the Conditional Turn-Based Battle or the CTB system, but more on those in a bit. The game had a huge budget of over $30 million, and had more than 100 team members working on its development, as Square was clearly intent to make yet another seamless transition between consoles, as it had done with the Nintendo Entertainment System to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System previously. It was also the first game in the series to feature 3D backgrounds, voice acting and facial animations. The story saw you playing as Tidus in the world of Spyro, and follows a group of adventurers and their quest to destroy the evil rampaging monster known only as Sin. During the game, Tidus, who has his home city of Zanarkand destroyed by Sin, travels alongside the young summoner Yuna to aid her alongside others on her pilgrimage to destroy Sin. Final Fantasy X changed up a lot of what was popular in previous titles with great success. The three directors behind the game pretty much scrapped the world map, with it only appearing near the end of the game. Instead, travel between locations was done in a more linear fashion, with a single path between areas. As with the other titles, a new minigame was implemented. a fictional underwater sport called Blitzball, which the player could partake in at various stages throughout the main storyline. The new conditional turn-based battle system was simplistic in that it erased the fear of time-related pressure on the player during battle, allowing for more thought to go into choosing their next move. Players would also be able to switch out party members during battle at any time, which was a first for the series. Finally, summoning had an overhaul. Instead of the player summoning a creature, waiting until it had performed its attack and re-entering the battle, this time the player would summon and leave the battle to the Aeon, which had its own set of statistics, commands and overdrives. Players would only re-enter the battle again should their summon die, run out of time or kill the enemy. During the game you gain access to 5 Aeons, with an additional 3 becoming available via completed side quests. Cid made his appearance during this title as Riku's father and leader of the sand-dwelling Al Bhed tribe, who pilots an airship and offers up the party helpful advice. The game was a massive commercial success, selling more than 6 million units worldwide, and became the first PlayStation 2 title to sell both 2 million units and 4 million units, and as of October 2007, it is noted as being the 8th best sold game for the PlayStation 2. Final Fantasy X was nearly praised all around by reviewers for its fantastic graphics, amazing voice acting, the implementation of the sphere leveling system, and its improvement in combat and storytelling. It went on to win and be rated highly in a host of awards from various large companies including IGN and GameSpot. Its success would see for the first time ever a direct sequel made to the game, Final Fantasy X-2. Final Fantasy X-2 released onto the PS2 in 2003, and as stated was the first ever time that a direct sequel had been made to a core Final Fantasy game. The game would be a first for quite a few things. For example, it received no input in its musical score from Nobuo Uematsu. It also featured only 3 main playable characters, all of whom were female, and also allowed for early access to most of the game's locations. The story saw you playing as Yuna from Final Fantasy X with 2 other characters, Pain and Riku, the latter who was also one of the main characters from the last game, as they travelled the world attempting to stop those who wished to cause disruption and end the Eternal Calm, whilst also trying to search for clues of the lost Tidus. And Cid again made his appearance as Riku's father, who was attempting to convert Zanarkand into a tourist attraction. Final Fantasy X-2 once again changed combat systems, exchanging the conditional turn-based battles from the previous game with the active time battle system being brought back. It also didn't use sphere grid leveling as Final Fantasy X did. During their quests, players could choose to skip most of the side missions which made up the bulk of the journey, and instead concentrate only on the main storyline, completing it in around 10 hours or so. However, you could also choose instead to do all of the missions, making for a much larger experience. This change allowed for a lot of freedom when playing. Finally, you could also again witness different endings depending on the choices you made throughout your missions. Within the first 9 months of its release, the game had sold 1 million copies in North America and close to 4 million copies worldwide, and hit widely positive reviews, praising its further improvement in voice acting and graphics in relation to an increased performance with characters' facial expressions. As a whole, it was yet again another commercial and critical success for Square, and the company were deep into the stages of developing their next big move into attempting to further strengthen their position in the gaming industry. First released in Japan back in May 16, 2002 for the PS2, and later during that year for the PC, Final Fantasy XI Online would go on to be released in North America the following year for the PC, and then in early 2004 for the PlayStation 2. It was on April 1st, 2003 that Square also merged with the Enix Corporation to help strengthen their hold in the role-playing game market and to fight off the threat of heightened development costs and competition from foreign developers. The game would go on to be released for the Xbox 360 throughout the world in April 2006, making it the first MMORPG to be cross-platform and the first of the titles to be seen on Microsoft's new generation of console. Final Fantasy XI has also now benefited from 4 large expansion packs to further improve the game's environment for its many paying customers. At the start of the game, the player must choose from 5 different playable races, and initially from a group of only 6 job classes including the Warrior, Monk, White Mage and Black Mage. However, as of 2008 this has been increased to 20 different roles to choose from. During your journey, you can undertake missions which will advance the main storyline's plot further, as well as quests which help to fill out the virtual world around you. Quests grant you fame and various rewards, whilst completing missions advances your rank, giving you access to new areas as well as newer privileges. From the beginning, you will play as residents of one of 3 main countries, and begin a journey to band them together to take on the resurrected Shadow Lord. The new expansions have served to increase the main game's storyline for players, as is the norm with most MMORPGs. Battle for the first time would see you fight your enemies in the same world in which you navigate around, whereas in previous games you would be taken to a new screen in which to do battle. It was this system which would reoccur in future titles in the series. Partying was a huge necessity during the game. A typical group consisted of 6 players, with the standard healers, tanks to take the majority of the pain, and the damage dealers. This balanced team is required to take on several missions enemies which you couldn't take on alone. Towards the end of the game, content consisted of forming alliances, which were made up of 3 parties placed together, making a group of 18 players, taking on the hardest bosses in the game. Moving on, the game's musical score was created by Nobu Uematsu alongside 2 others who assisted in writing the huge world's detailed music. Finally, players could raise their own chocobos during the story and also race them against other players. And Sid could this time be found as a master engineer for the nation of Bastuk's metalworks, and he goes on to play a large part in different quests and missions throughout the game. Overall, Final Fantasy XI received largely positive reviews. However, it did suffer from a difficult and long installation, added with the fact that it didn't offer up any real player versus player or PvP combat as other massively multiplayer online role-playing games such as World of Warcraft did. It also initially forced North American players to battle alongside much more experienced Japanese players whom had already completed the game's various quests. However, this didn't stop Square Enix from continuing to develop the game further, and at its height it was reported to have in 2006 between 200,000 and 300,000 active players logged in during the day and was the largest of its kind in Japan. Final Fantasy XI Online has survived throughout the years and has largely been a success for the company, allowing it to break even and make a profit since December 2003. It contained many elements which Square Enix would use in its newer main core games for both the PlayStation 2 and onwards. Well gamers, for now that's all from me. Be sure to tune in and check out the last part of the history of Final Fantasy next Friday. Also, don't forget to drop a comment in the comment section below or on Twitter and Facebook to give your opinion of what series of games you would like to be done next. So, if you want more History of shows, Honest Game previews, reviews and much more every Friday, then be sure to subscribe to The Honest Gamer. And as always, it is The Honest Gamer here with Quantic Media, and happy gaming.